Imagine going to a shop, buying something that you like, and paying in cash for it. What's there to imagine? That's something you do all the time, right? Now imagine buying something online and paying in cash for it. Again, you might say it's cash for delivery, there's nothing new about it. But what if I told you there was an alternate method of paying in cash online? I'm talking about cryptocurrency, yeah. A safe, secure, and digital form of money that you can use today. And more specifically, I'm talking about Bitcoin. Bitcoin was first introduced in 2009 by an individual or by a group of people who went by the name Satoshi Nakamoto. We still don't know who he is or who they are. But that's hardly of any relevance because we don't know who invented paper and we still use cash, which is printed on paper, as our primary mode of transactions today. But first, let's understand the difference between Bitcoin and Bitcoin. Confused? Well, don't be. Because if I capitalize the B, then Bitcoin is the entire ecosystem in which these digital payments work. But if I don't capitalize the B, then Bitcoin is the actual digital currency itself. And mind you, this has nothing to do with the shiny coins that you see in stock images, because that's not how Bitcoins look at all. Bitcoins are actually digital signals or digital files being shared over a network. And the difference between Bitcoin, or rather the biggest difference between Bitcoin and cash, fiat currencies, is that if someone steals the cash from you, there's no way you can establish ownership over it. But that is absolutely not possible with Bitcoins because each Bitcoin is digitally encrypted. It is digitally marked with your identity. So that way, if someone steals the currency from you, you can always prove that it was yours. The next few questions that might come to your mind when I talk about Bitcoins is how do I get hold of it? Who controls Bitcoins? And even how are Bitcoins generated? Because after all, the money that we are used to is printed by our governments, is saved in our bank accounts, invested in financial instruments, and spent using debit cards and credit cards, which attract interest and transaction fees. And we are even told how much money we can withdraw in a particular day. The simplest way of getting hold of Bitcoins is to get paid in exchange for goods and services. And how do these transactions occur? Using digital wallets, which are pretty similar to the apps that we are used to right now. As for who controls Bitcoins, well, nobody. There is no single authority who can boss around saying do this and do that. There is no transaction fees either. It is optional for you to pay it. But you might ask, how is it possible to have money that no one has control over? When I talk about the Indian rupee, we are reminded of the RBI. When I talk about the US dollar, we are reminded of the US Federal Reserve. And that's because these are the institutions that print the money. Similarly, when I talk about Bitcoins, we have to realize that these Bitcoins are not generated by any single agency, but by every single user who is participating in the development of this network. That means Bitcoin is a decentralized currency which is maintained by many administrators across the world. These administrators are called miners. Why miners? Well, we'll get into that later. But first, let's see how Bitcoin actually works. So if I send you a Bitcoin, then this transaction is entered into what is called the blockchain. The blockchain is like a public ledger that can be accessed by anyone. And once an entry is made into this ledger, it can never be modified. So what information does this transaction contain? Well, it can simply say that Srinath sent you 10 Bitcoins, or it can even contain the details of the transaction like signed contracts. And this transaction would contain a mathematical encryption to verify that it was indeed me who sent the money to you. Anytime a transaction occurs, it is sent out to all administrators of the network who will validate the authenticity of the mathematical encryption. And once this encryption is validated, the transaction is confirmed. Once these transactions are processed, they are stored in blocks, and a series of these consecutive blocks is called a blockchain. The transactions in the blockchain are written in chronological order. This allows all the computers in the network to agree when these transactions actually took place. The blocks are also subjected to high levels of encryption that prevents any modification at any point in time. The administrators and computers that perform these operations are called miners. Why miners? Because for every single transaction that is processed or validated, they get paid in Bitcoins. And because of the large volume of transactions that occur, it makes it a very lucrative business. And this attracts a lot of people, very similar to the California gold rush of the 1800s. And not just that, mining is also the process of generating Bitcoins. Remember that even though cryptocurrency might seem like the future of money, In India, the legality is quite questionable. So before you try your hand at it, exercise caution.